Hello and welcome to the Over and Back Classic NBA podcast. I am Jason, and with me as usual is Rich. Hello, Rich.
Hey, what's going on?
Oh, another set of episodes for The Last Dance. Episodes 5 and 6 are in the can. I'm going to admit, I think that these two were the weakest so far, in general, particularly episode 5. And maybe it's just because a lot of the stuff that was covered, it feels like stuff that we've heard and talked about before. But I feel like these were not quite as strong. Still enjoyable. Still, I liked them, but not quite as strong as the first 4 episodes.
I have to. So I actually liked episode 6 a lot. Episode 6 might be one of my favorites so far of the entire series, mostly because I think we dove into a little bit more of the maybe Jordan isn't the most perfect human being in the universe, and maybe we all shouldn't be like Mike and all that sort of stuff. I will admit to you, episode 5 kind of felt like, hey, do you remember the Dream Team documentary? Here's like a much worse version of it.
Sure.
And that kind of annoyed me a little bit. I mean, the shoe stuff at the beginning of episode 5 I thought was pretty cool. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. This is pretty fun. And then it just kind of tailed off into, stuff we kind of already know about, the Dream Team and all this stuff going on with the Dream Team. And then, I mean, I guess there wasn't a ton to go with the 92 finals. Like, I love that finals because I really love that Portland Trailblazers team, but I get that maybe you can't suck too much out of that other than like Jordan being like, I don't really think Clyde Drexler's very good, or, I don't think he's on my level type thing. But other than that, it was like, oh, Michael doesn't think that Clyde's on his level. And then Michael proceeds to just like absolutely dominate the finals. And it's like, oh, well, all right. Like,
good point. Right. Yeah,
maybe he's right. Okay.
Enough,
and then you're kind of done.
One,
You're kind of done. Right. You're like, oh, well, I mean, he's better than Clyde Drexler. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like, so that's where I think maybe episode 5 was a little weak. But I thought there was some good stuff in episode 6, and I'm curious if how much farther we go there. But my real question though, Jason, we left this episode 6 on an absolute cliffhanger. Do you think the Chicago Bulls can beat the New Jersey Nets in the first round of the Eastern Conference playoffs? Calipari's team is pretty good.
Yeah,
Sherman Douglas, he's looking good. Kerry Kittles, Keith Van Horn, they got a lot of talent.
Good point. It's gonna be tough. Yeah,
Chris Gatling's out there. He's tough. Yeah. Who guards Chris Gatling?
Who guards Chris Gatling? I mean, well, how many people guard Chris Gatling is the question. I mean, double, maybe triple team Chris Gatling. You can't stop Chris Gatling. You can only hope to contain him. So, fair point, Rich. I wasn't quite prepared for that, so maybe we'll have to punt that toward the end of the episode if we can see what happens. But yeah, I befuddled by that question, I guess. Speaking of young NBA stars, we begin 1998 with 19-year-old Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan facing off somewhat in the All-Star game. This is 1998 All-Star game, obviously February 98, Madison Square Garden. Jordan wouldn't be his last All-Star game, but people were thinking at the time that probably would be his last All-Star game. Not thinking that he would come back as a Wizard one day. Did we even know? I guess we knew what a Wizard was at that point, but
we did know. We briefly knew what a Wizard was, but it was uncomfortable and we didn't like it. And then Michael Jordan came back as a Wizard, and it was uncomfortable and we didn't like it. So.
It was more uncomfortable. Yeah. Hey, listen, greatest Wizard 6 man ever. I would have to say, probably. Michael Jordan, maybe. I don't know.
Absolutely. Well, Tony Kukoc. I'm just joking. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So we get some fun, backstage stuff with Larry Bird, who's of course the coach of the Pacers now, and MJ razzing on each other. You get some comments about from 98 Jordan about Kobe, about you don't let the game come to him. He just goes out there and take it. They all kind of make fun of him a little bit for
that was interesting. I was glad they had that footage in there. It was kind of cool. Where, these guys are like, I ain't gonna pass it in. What a little, and like people forget that that's what the reputation for Kobe was. Like now it's obviously in the time of his life and his career or whatever, it's kind of changed a little bit, and he's like this ultra competitor, and he's like the next lineage of Jordan in terms of that he just really wants to win. But at that time they're like, what is this little 18-year-old asshole think that he's doing in our league? Because it was an old man's league at that time. It was old, and these dudes did not like Kobe Bryant out there thinking he was good and thinking he should have the ball and that he should be doing everything. I mean, that was the thought at the league. I mean, that was the thought of like the major media too. About Kobe. But what was cool though is that the fans really embraced Kobe in those early years, and that's how he became an all-star starter at 19. Is that the young fans were really into this guy? Like, this guy's cool, we like this guy, and we'd see that carry through. Those fans would become adults, and they're still arguing about Kobe today on Twitter. So.
Yeah, it's fun. We enjoy that. No, yeah, I mean, yeah, and obviously, yeah, Kobe was not. He was a little bit ahead of in terms of popularity as opposed to, skills. I mean, he was a very talented young player, but he had a long way to, or only really two or 3 years before he really emerged as, top 10 level, top 5 MVP level type player. But he wasn't quite there yet, but he was still good. And obviously we've talked about, I know on previous episodes about, early confrontations between Jordan and Kobe and how, Jordan was quick to praise him and talk about, the stuff that he would share with him. And, definitely, served a little bit in terms of an inspiration mentor type role. We get some footage of Kobe here. I think just recorded weeks before he passed away.
I remember that being a thing. Yeah, I remember them talking about how they had just talked to him during for the documentary, and it's kind of chilling footage to see, knowing in 2 weeks' time what was going to be happening.
Right. Yeah. And he talks about how, it's rough couple of years of him coming into the league, that he was, he started off being the kid who shot a bunch of air balls and, of course, Jordan providing guidance for him and all that good stuff. So not a lot there. But, nice to see, the seeing the backstage type of stuff in 98, maybe we talk about it later, but I know there are some people who are sort of disappointed that the focus of this series has been so much away from the 98 years, and they were kind of expecting more of kind of the backstage access, and I guess getting to know the personalities of that team. And I'm good with the documentary, how it's gone so far. Some quibbles with these 2 episodes, particularly episode 5, which I think was definitely the flattest one. But I can see the stuff here and wonder, okay, could it have been an even better documentary if they focused on 98, or is there just, not really that much there? Obviously, I have not seen all the footage that they have. But it definitely gets pulled away from 98 a lot more. And I think in this episode, a little bit to its detriment.
Yeah. And that's, I think, going to be a problem throughout the rest of it. And like you said, without knowing the footage, I have no idea if it's oh my God, you're not going to believe what Bill Wennington did. And, oh my God, Scott Burrell and Jason Caffey were just absolutely ridiculous. I just think the problem is and maybe people heighten their own expectations about it, is I just don't think that 98 Bulls team is very interesting. I don't think a lot of NBA teams are really interesting when you actually follow them around day by day. They're just a bunch of dudes in planes and cars, reading books or playing video games or playing cards, and then they get off and then they play basketball. It's they do it again.
Yeah, I mean, what's happening to them is obviously interesting. I mean, it is obviously pretty unique in NBA history, that 98 team.
Oh, for sure. I just mean, I think people are man, it's going to be all this crazy stuff going on behind the scenes or whatnot. And a lot of stuff is going on, but a lot of it, when you're getting the backstage access, it's
not going to be said in the way, they're obviously, cognizant of the fact that the cameras there, even if they're letting their guard down at a certain point, if you get used to cameras. But
right, if there was something huge that happened, say Michael Jordan punched a wall and Jerry Krause was you're fucking out of here, I'm firing you're they probably wouldn't have that anyway. You know what I mean? They would have closed the door and said, okay, no, the camera's not here for right now or whatever. So everything you're seeing is sort of the sanitized-ish version of it, and unless it's Scott Burrell being ragged on, which that has stayed forever. So
I'm guessing that we're probably getting the spiciest stuff from 97, 98 on here. I'm guessing they're not holding a lot back.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, I mean, so that's probably a fair guess. So, staying with 98 a bit before we get back to the other focuses of the episodes, as we talked about, was the initial relationship with Nike and how the marketing made him into one of the most popular athlete of his time, and then diving into the 92 season, and then of course the Dream Team. But back to 98, we get some cool stuff with Jordan wearing the first Air Jordan 1s in Madison Square Garden in '84. He wore them there at his debut. He has a really good game against the Knicks, although his feet are bleeding at incredible there, but definitely some interesting footage and, more adding to the Jordan hype than anything, but fun stuff.
Yeah, no, I liked a lot of that early, because we don't hear a ton about maybe the courting of Michael Jordan and the Nike. I really, for some reason, and maybe I'm just not watching the right stuff for it, but I don't feel like I've gotten enough about Nike's kind of rise in the basketball game and how important Jordan was to that rise. And I was kind of glad to see that a little bit because, yeah, I mean, they took a huge risk with this guy. And then, like, we kind of think of it as like, oh, yeah, they paid Jordan a bunch of money and then Nike became the biggest shoe company ever because, of course, they did. But, like, you know, I forget who brought it up. I forget exactly whose quote it was, maybe David Aldridge, I forget it who was, but was saying that, like, yeah, a lot of the top NBA guys were getting like $100,000 for shoe deals, and here comes Nike with $250,000, and it's like, oh my god, like, had that not worked, like, say Michael Jordan's foot breaks the second year and he never comes, you know what I mean, like, and he never comes back or does any of that stuff, like, that is a monumental, like, I mean, that company is probably never going back into the world of basketball or sponsorship or whatnot, but it worked out for them, and we've seen, you know, that entire culture rise basically from that in a lot of ways. So that it's really cool to see that and dive into that. And I always try to think of like what would have happened had it not worked, had Jordan, you know, not been what they thought he was going to be or whatnot. And you know, we see so many times that happening in today's NBA. I mean, I'm sure Adidas is kicking themselves about, you know, the Derrick Rose deal they signed, you know, 9 years ago at this point, and it's still got, I think, another year on it or whatnot. So yeah, it's amazing what could have happened. But I thought that was kind of cool. It was a nice little insight there, and you get Jordan, you know, putting over Adidas, being like, yeah, I love Adidas. I like to wear Adidas. And just thinking how in like like 10 years later, just like hearing Jordan be like, yeah, I wish I was with Adidas. Like how awesome, how like incredible that was, because he's so synonymous now with Nike. And yeah, it's like, it's almost unquestionable that he would be with anybody else but Nike.
Right, yeah, and you know I think the Nike exec who's quoted is saying that at the end of year 4 they'd hoped to sell $3 million worth of Air Jordans, but in year 1 they sold $126 million worth of Air Jordans. So, yeah, obviously, yeah, and you know the kind of the key was to market him, you know, more like a tennis player rather than a basketball player, because Converse had pretty much all the big basketball stars at the time, you know, Magic, Larry Bird, Bernard King, you know, the guys who sold shoes. So you know, Nike did differently. They were, you know, kind of focused more. They had tennis. They had a lot of track shoes, and you know, obviously we get a lot, you know, clips of all the commercials and you know, Spike Lee directing the, you know, the famous spots. It's got to be the shoes, you know, all that good stuff. So yeah, I mean, again, a few insights there. I think most of that story's been fairly well told. I guess the early stuff about what, you know, drew Jordan to Nike, some of that was new, but a lot of it had been told before. You know, back to '98, I think the key thing is like the Georgia Dome game of you know, late in '98, March of '98, they draw 62,000 in the Georgia Dome. You know, it's described by somebody there as a Pope and Jesus phenomenon of you know, Jordan. And, you know, and throughout these episodes, particularly in episode 6, you know, we're getting more footage of Jordan, you know, in these huge media scrums, you know, signing all these autographs for fans, all these big crowds, all this screaming at him. And you know, it goes on and on about how that's wearing him down. It's wearing him down a lot. 93, it's wearing him down a lot. 98, you know, both times before he's about to retire. So, you know, definitely strengthen some themes there. It's easy to forget what a spectacle that '98 was for the NBA. It's basically the peak of the NBA in terms of popular culture. Yeah. I mean, I don't. Yeah, I mean, we're kind of in a different media environment now, so it's never going to quite be the same as it was. We're much more specialized now, but you know, but NBA, I mean, those finals drew, you know, incredible numbers, you know, like, you know, was it like 20, 30 million numbers in terms of, you know, people who are watching those. And, you know, there's very few things now that, you know, almost everybody watches, and the NBA definitely was at that point. Jordan specifically was at that point in '98.
Yeah, no, it absolutely feels like 1998 was like the peak when, like you're saying, where sports and particularly the NBA felt like it was just interwoven with like popular culture. Like there wasn't the NBA and also like entertainment and that sort of stuff. It was like that was it. You know, every entertainment show, every news broadcast, they were talking about the NBA. They were talking about Michael Jordan. Like he was that. He transcended sport in a lot of ways and just became a public figure. Yeah. Like, you know, any other, you know, major public figure was. And yeah, I like the Georgia Dome game a lot, and they showed like the camera shot of like the really like very oddly rigged, you know, stadium, and there's like a floor in the middle of it. Like I want more games than just like horribly oddly configured domes that like nothing looks good. It's like cavernous, and it's like an awful place to watch a basketball game. But I like a good dome game. I like a good Alamo Dome. I like a good Georgia Dome. You know, some Sky Dome is some Sky Dome Toronto Raptors games, you know.
I forget why I was there. It was when I was working for a newspaper, but I was at I didn't actually go to a game, but the Final Four in Atlanta, I think it was 07. It was the year Ohio State and Florida played in the final. And I went to like the Georgia Dome and like saw like how it was like all set up, and it was like a really weird configuration because obviously the court is so much smaller than the field, and you have like a whole lot of it like curtained off, and I can't really describe it very well. My memory of it isn't that clear, but it was just so bizarre. Like I had no idea like how they would no clue that was the way that they would configure it, even though it kind of makes sense, in your head once you realize, okay, yeah, there's only certain ways to have this work in this space.
Right. I was like the Pontiac Silverdome with the Pistons, where they just put a giant blue tarp over half the stadium. So like
that was basically what it was in Atlanta. That was it was basically the same type of thing they were doing. Yeah. So so anything else, kind of regarding Nike or, obviously David Folks interview?
No, I think I got everything out of my idea.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, diving into 92, we don't, again, not a whole lot about the 92 team other than, kind of there's some discussion of them being awesome. And we get some nice clips of the 92 team being awesome. And then we skip right to the finals. Don't talk about the playoffs at all. And Jordan said, yeah. I mean, Drexler was a threat, but I took offense to the idea that they were comparing. And yeah, Jordan averaged like 35.8 points per game in that finals. I mean, just completely outclassed Drexler, who was again Drexler, probably 80% of the player that Jordan was maybe at his peak. I mean, it's really really good. Hall of Famer, Dream Teamer, deserved all that stuff. Again, unfair to compare pretty much anyone to Jordan, but I think he suffered the most in that comparison because he was kind of, you sort of glance at a distance, and he was a guy who had a lot of the same types. He was good at the same types of things. I mean, he was a great dunker. He was really athletic, similar position, similar size, all that good stuff. But yeah, obviously unfair. That's an unfair comparison for anybody.
Yeah, and like I like that they focused a little bit on the 92 team, like briefly. At least we had the highlight clip because that's like my favorite Bulls team of all time. That 92 team.
That's awesome. Yeah,
the thing that's awesome about that team is like, and people will always say, oh no, the 72 win 96 team or 1998 or any of these other teams, but like that's those other years I think is when when Jordan to me stopped being like a super entertaining player and just became like a great he was just an unbelievably good player. But like 92, he's still flying all over the place. He's still bouncing like like a pogo stick. He's all over, and like Horace Grant's all over the court, and Scottie Pippen's all over the court. That 92 team, I love those guys because like by 96 and 97, they're slow. They're kind of winning games by attrition. They're winning games because they're better than every other team, and they're winning 91 to 78 because they're just better than you at every aspect of the game or whatever. But 92, man, they're flying around. They're just like, I love that team. And yeah, if people, that I think that the montage did a good job of it, but yeah, do yourself a favor and watch like a 1992 Chicago Bulls team because it's such a different ride than when you watch, 96, 97, 98 Bulls, and it's just a completely different team. And the style of play that they played is much more of like the 80s style than it would be, the mid 90s to the early 2000s style that they sort of adopted, in the last three-peat.
Right. And yeah, they were, I think the 92 team was a great young team, and the 96 team, through 98 was a great old team, as you talked about, man. That's a good way of putting it. And Jordan, was still closer to his athletic peak at 92, 28 years old. I mean, just able to, jump out of the arena. And the 98 Jordan, was, still tremendously great, but not able to do the athletic things that 92 Jordan could do. So, so definitely, I think the most fun team of that era definitely I think would be the 92 team, because Pippen and Grant are absolutely hitting their peak too, and they're just so fast, and so and Armstrong was a fun player and all that good stuff. So absolutely. One thing that you that I found interesting was Kraetsch very much putting the focus on organization during the 92 finals interview. Very much, not surprising that would be a consistent theme with him. And obviously that plays more into, the 98 story, but, he was even ringing that bell back then as, okay, it's a great organization, which obviously, serves him and serves his owner and serves, a lot of people who are not Michael Jordan through that comment. So I found that interesting.
Yeah, and that's a tough comment to to make, because that's one where you're like, and the thing is like halfway through him discussing that, and I'm like, you know what, that's cool. He's like, shouting out the other people in the organization, the people that might not get all the credit, the equipment managers, and then he just like keeps going on, and you're like, all right, Jerry, like,
all right,
stop,
I get
you
it.
had it, like it was good. That he's like, that's really who wins these titles, not the. I'm like, no, just stop talking. You had it, like Jerry, like because half of that sentence was fine. Half of that sentence was like, yes, the players are great or whatever, but like it takes an entire, all these guys really chip in, and all these guys really make this a world-class organization, and then it's like, all right, good. Period. Just stop, Jerry. But he didn't, and he just kept going, and that's often why Jerry got himself in trouble. So,
yes. So the dream team. I think a lot of the. I think the story here has been well told elsewhere. It's still enjoyable to see. There's highlights from the famous scrimmage with Magic and Barkley's team taking the big lead, and then Magic talking trash to Jordan, and then Jordan leading the team back, and then his quote of "This is the '90s," and then Magic's like, "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" And all that good stuff. It's been well told, obviously, in Jeff McCallum's book and other places. And then before then, they talk about the decision to leave Isaiah off the team. Jordan denies that he was responsible for it, but also. Which I can say, I mean, I think it's probably true that Jordan didn't directly say, I'm not going to play with Isaiah Thomas, but I think everybody involved knew better than to even like bring up the idea. Would be, kind of my thought on that. And I mean, I get like, the appeal for a lot of these players and what they talk about the special memories of are, the practices, the camaraderie, the bonding. Jordan talked about that. And, Isaiah being there probably would have ruined that. So,
right. And it's not like Jordan was the only person that thought Isaiah was a dick and didn't want him around. That's the other problem, too. It's like, I know it all falls on Jordan, but I'm sure, like, Karl Malone's probably like, I don't really want that guy around either.
Yeah.
He's kind of a tool.
I mean, Magic and Bird famously didn't want him either. Right, and those are the three guys you have to satisfy, and all three hated him. I mean, maybe if Magic and Bird loved him, maybe they could have gotten him on there. But, I mean, I do think that Isaiah deserved it in terms of, the type of player that he was, which was still a very good player, not as great as he'd been. But I think in terms of what he had accomplished over the past decade, obviously leading them to championships, being the best player on that team, I think his legacy in the same way that, Bird wasn't, an elite level player anymore, but he definitely belonged. I think Isaiah did have the same belonging, but he pissed everybody off and nobody wanted to play with him. And so I get the decision. I don't think it's some huge injustice that he didn't get picked.
Yeah. No, I'm right with you.
Yeah. And then, we do get, I think the thing that, the two things that are focused on with this are, covering up with the Reebok logo with the American flag, which is not. I guess there was some controversy about it, but I think it's treated kind of in a heroic way, which I'm not saying it's. I wouldn't call it heroic. I don't think it's horrific. I mean, it's it's just kind of silly, and I guess it doesn't. I feel like it's not played in what I consider okay, this is just kind of a silly, petty thing. I don't think it's treated quite that way just because of how protective Jordan was about his brand. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it is strange that especially in today's society where we're just so, oh my God, brands are, ruining everything, and oh my God, marketing and all this sort of stuff. And it's good for Jordan to stick up for his brand. I'm like, okay, right. I guess whatever.
Right. Yeah.
I'm kind of whatever, but yeah, some people were like, yeah, that's good. Screw Reebok. And I'm like, okay.
Right.
Yeah. No, the other selfless, multi-million-dollar shoe company is better than this multi-million-dollar shoe company. I guess. Yeah.
Right.
The one part though about that entire thing, did you hear the name drop that Michael Jordan gave?
Oh, Harvey Schiller.
WCW Nitro star Harvey Schiller.
Yeah, Nitro Harvey Schiller. Yes.
Eric Bischoff and Michael Jordan have the same hatred for Harvey Schiller. So
yes, yeah.
I think it's storyline. Well, I don't know if maybe Bischoff hates Harvey Schiller in real life. Yeah, actually, I think he might. But
I'm not
at least
sure.
on character, Eric Bischoff hates Harvey Schiller too.
Because Harvey Schiller was, he was a Turner guy.
Yeah.
He was
president of the Olympic Committee too, or executive director of the Olympic Committee. I think was his official title.
Yeah, wasn't he also? He was involved with some of the Atlanta. Obviously, the Turner owned, Atlanta sports teams. The Hawks were owned by the Raptors at the point. Yeah, so he's a pretty well known guy. I always think of Dr. Harvey Schiller because I believe he is known that way. So, and then of course we get to Tony Kukoc, And we finally got some Tony Kukoc. I hopefully
guess
that satisfied you.
I guess we did. I mean, at least they told his side of the story. But I mean,
right,
I'm still waiting for, hey, this man won 6th man of the year for us. Like,
yes,
filled in admirably when Scottie Pippen was out for 33 games. But okay, that's fine.
Really no 98 Kukoc at all.
He was he wasn't 6th man of the year that year, but he was like an incredible player off the bench for them.
Right,
6th
that's
man
true.
Of the year in 1996. Like, what are we doing?
Right, he has not really fit into this story much, but yeah, maybe more later. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, basically the idea of Jerry Krause is fawning over Kukoc. He's was the star in Europe. They drafted him earlier on, had been trying to bring him over, but he's making a decent amount of money in Europe, wouldn't make as much in the NBA. Pippen in particular offended by Kukoc being a higher priority in terms of signing than he was. And Jordan Pippen both, want to basically take it as an FU to Krause to destroy Kukoc in the game against Croatia, which in game 1 they basically do. A few things that I learned about this is that Kukoc apparently was not aware of the fact that Jordan and Pippen hated him and wanted to see him be destroyed. So that was fun. And and Kukoc just kind of like, oh yeah, I hadn't met you guys. Like, what are you doing? This,
right. Hello, I'm your new teammate.
And I think you and I talked about it, but I'd forgotten that Kukoc actually did play pretty well in game 2 of that, which was the final game, the gold medal game for the So it wasn't like it wasn't like it was some demonstration that he wasn't an NBA level player. He played pretty well against the best the NBA had to offer at the time, and Christian later.
Of course. But I thought they did a decent job in this, at least, of giving Tony. I thought Tony Kukoc acclimated himself pretty well, because he wasn't like angry about it, but he was just kind of like, yeah, I didn't like leave Croatia right away because my country was going through like a godly, bloody civil war, and I didn't really want to leave my family behind. So eventually I did take less money and came to the NBA, and then now you guys hate me because it's just like, all right, like, yeah, I mean, had you have known how, like, and I thought Michael Wilbon had a good quote, like, he was like kind of annoyed that Pippen called him soft, because he's like, dude, like, this guy's dealing with like his family is dying, there's a civil war going on in his country, like maybe don't call him soft because he only scored 4 points in a basketball game. Like, maybe there are things bigger than basketball there, Scott, but it is what it is. But I thought Kukoc did a good job and was just kind of like, yeah, I mean, whatever. And I was so glad that they actually touched on game 2 and gave him a little bit of credit, that like it wasn't just like, because I feel like the Dream Team documentary was pretty much just like, they locked down Tony Kukoc and he was done and knew he didn't belong in the NBA or whatever. And it's like, well, I mean, in game 2 he scored 16 points and he scored like 21 points a game after that game, and he led his team to the gold medal game. So I don't know, he's a pretty good player. I think.
Not bad. Yeah, that's all right. And then Harvey Gantt, the candidate for Senate in 1990, North Carolina. Famously, Jordan is asked to endorse Gantt, who's facing Jesse Helms, who's a horrible, racist senator, Republican. Jordan doesn't endorse Gantt. He admits actually saying Republicans buy sneakers too, which I'd always thought was the sentiment, but not the actual real quote. But he admits to saying it out. He says that it was kind of a joke that he said it, on the bus with Pippen and Grant and all those guys. But he said it kind of facetiously, but he admitted to saying it, which I was a little surprised by that.
Yeah, it was cool to kind of add some background to that quote, because I was the same thing. Like, I've heard that quote before, and then I've also heard that's not exactly what he said. He just kind of, it's the sentiment, or there were some words put in his mouth or whatever. For Jordan to flat out say, no, I said that, but it was a joke, is I guess a pretty big step, because he did say it, and I think that's something that's been denied or argued about for years and years and years. And Sam Smith's been sort of unjustly, crucified for, that's not what Michael said. And it's like, it's what he said. And it's that I thought was a pretty interesting part of this documentary. They didn't explore it too much, and I understand that this is maybe not the documentary to do that, but I do think it is a super interesting thing, because I did see a lot of sentiment on Twitter of like, well, we shouldn't expect all of our athletes to be activists, and we shouldn't expect our athletes to do this or stand up against all this sort of stuff. And I understand that sentiment, but I also think that like the guy that Harvey Gantt was against in North Carolina, where Jordan grew up, was like a very horrible person. You know what I mean? It's not like this guy's kind of a dick and this guy's black. Yeah. Oh, everybody vote for the black guy. It's like this guy doesn't think Martin Luther King deserves a holiday, or that like they shouldn't have any like museums or honor, you know, any black men. And here's you know, like
schools should be segregated. That's great.
Right, like we're not talking about like here's some Republican guy that I don't know if I quite agree with. It's like we're talking about a very bad, like a very
heinous,
backwards, heinous racist guy. So I know that, like, yes, not all our athletes need to be activists and not all our athletes have to be role models. But would it kill Jordan to say, hey, don't vote for the guy that doesn't think, you know, blacks and whites should go to school together? I don't know. Yeah. I don't think that's too much to ask.
I get it. Yeah. You know, Jordan says, I never thought of myself as an activist. He's selfish, probably. You know, I mean, he's willing to go that far. Interesting they bring Obama out there to talk about it. And he sort of gently chides Jordan, but he also sort of is like, well, you know, maybe he wasn't ready to do that, or, you know, that wasn't what he felt comfortable doing, which I kind of feel like is there to launder Jordan's point of view a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I think there is some validity that, you know, it shouldn't be up to Michael Jordan or athletes to always be the ones to step up and, you know, to activism. That's up to everybody. But in this case, I mean, it is pretty much, it is almost like the most heinous person imaginable that you're fighting against, and it would have, you know, it could have been helpful maybe, but who knows. But yeah, they bring it up. I do feel like in a way that is more somewhat at least shining a little bit of a light of criticism on Jordan than I expected, even if they are, I think, maybe essentially selling his point of view. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how people, you know, kind of respond to that more as we get more reaction to that one. But yeah, so that was episode 5. Episode 6, I you know, the focus of, I think there's two bits of focus here that are themes throughout the episode are, one, Jordan tiring of the spotlight, and then two, Jordan being super competitive, and then the ways that he acts out with those impulses, particularly in his gambling.
Yeah, I thought it was a big reason why I really liked this episode, and because this is a lot of what I was kind of hoping we were going to get, and I was kind of surprised that they dug in a little deeper than I thought they were going to be. I know that they didn't quite, you know, make a grand statement about anything. They didn't really say definitively, this is good, this is bad, or whatever, but they allowed the user to, or the viewer to kind of say, hey, here's this guy, you know, here's what Michael Jordan did in his free time. Here's how he treated other people. Here's, you know, some of the company he kept or whatever. And I was pretty surprised by that. I really thought that we were going to gloss over a lot of that stuff. And I'm glad that we at least got to a bit of it. And again, like it didn't make a grand statement of, is this good or is this bad or whatever, but it just kind of let the viewer in on the life, you know, outside of the court or off the court for Jordan. So I appreciated that a little bit.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting. You start to, the intro of the episode is Jordan. He's filming. I don't know if it's special or if it's a commercial or exactly what it is, but you know, this is, I think, 93, 92 maybe. And he keeps saying, I don't think basically the theme of it is like, you know, people say they want to step in his shoes, but if they knew the reality, they wouldn't want to. And he's like, I don't think you can see the true Michael Jordan if you're just in my shoes for a day. You have to be there for a long period of time. But he keeps, you know, it's some scripted thing or semi-scripted thing anyway. And he keeps doing different takes of it. It's like almost like, okay, this is Jordan like saying something that's really honest and really personal and really heartfelt. But then you hear him repeat and saying it over and over again in like a scripted way.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I actually was kind of, I mean, that kind of took me aback, and I really thought that was great editing and great filmmaking by whoever made the decision to have Jordan say it and then go, sorry, here, let's run that back. No, it's very difficult to have a day in my, I was like, oh my God. Like, yeah. Cause it's like you come into the episode with this, oh my God, heartfelt, close in on Michael Jordan and his eyes talking about how you hate, you know, being me is not easy and being me is, and then like cut. All right, actually, let's do it this way. And then it gets right back into the same voice. And you're like, oh man, like that, what felt like the most sincere moment of Michael Jordan that I've ever heard turned out to just be, you know, him filming a commercial. I thought it was really good editing that they did there.
Right. Yeah, and I think that was great, and I think that was. I mean, it doesn't mean that what he's saying isn't true. It doesn't feel that way, but it's really interesting to kind of see that presented, to just kind of put the artifice a little bit on. I mean, really, this whole project. I mean, we're seeing Jordan, say things, that we feel like are really honest, like how he really feels, and it certainly feels like he's being honest about certain things. How much he hates Isaiah Thomas, for instance. But yeah, who knows? It's. I mean, he's obviously. He has an incredible amount of skill about convincing you whether he's sincere, whether he is or not. He's a skilled actor. That's one of the things that has, that gives that adds to his appeal. He's very charismatic. Mm-hmm. He's a good actor. He's good at showing people what he wants to show them. So focusing on 98 a little bit first, we get some we get a little fun segment with Jordan playing coins with a coin game with the Stiff Brothers, where they're trying to throw a coin as close to the wall as possible without hitting the wall, I believe is the point of the game. So,
honestly, I spent the entire time with that segment being like, I don't understand the point of this game at all. Like, I guess I'm lame, or I've never played that before. Right. Finally, in the final game, the final betting game is when I finally realized what the point of the game was. Because I hated to admit, and I was hoping that you would be able to shine some light on quarters, but I guess you can't. So I think that's what the point of the game is. But sorry if we're lame and don't actually know the point of quarters.
Not really important what the point of the game is, but more just show again another example. There have been many about Jordan getting hyper competitive with the smallest people about the smallest things. And you can tell obviously he's frustrated he doesn't win it, and gets a little bit annoyed that he doesn't win it, but he laughs it off for the most part. We get not much from 98 here. You get Jordan. You get one of the last games of the season. It's the Magic and the Bulls, and Jordan sort of razzes Grant. They come to the huddle at the beginning, and Jordan sort of razzes Grant about the Magic falling off and not making the playoffs this year. And it's like because the ref first joke's like, oh yeah, do you know this guy? And then they all kind of have a laugh. It's Pippen's up there too, and so that was fun. And then you later on you get Jordan in 98 telling stories about, basically players drinking and smoking at halftime when he first joined the Bulls. And in fact, guys, players like bumming cigarettes from the coaches, which is a funny contrast to Jordan telling the same stories, in 2020. I mean, obviously he told them in a more bold way in 2020, but it's funny to see Jordan's point of view of that 98 and his point of view of that in 2020.
Yeah, and it's the official beer of The Last Dance is absolutely Miller Lite, because there is a lot of Miller Lite flowing in these episodes.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, they're all drinking after the game, I think, and right before Jordan has to go talk to the media. Another Jordan's like, oh god, I've talked to the media again, basically, kind of thing. And then you see Jordan being extremely impatient of wanting Pippen to keep going so that he can make a tea time, and then he gets on the bus and he honks the horn of the bus, and you get some fun clips of the Bulls going golfing, and Rodman saying vulgar things, and Jordan, kind of keeping score about what he's old. And there's a quote there. He talks about how a young coach would make them practice to stay. He would be frustrated about that, but Phil's saying, hey, Phil knows we need a break. So I wonder what 1990 Michael Jordan would think of 1998 Michael Jordan. Obviously 1998 Michael Jordan is still extremely competitive, but 1998 Michael Jordan doesn't mind taking a day off here and there. I wonder how
sure. Yeah, we talk about, oh my god, the ultra competitor, oh my god, the only focus in his life is basketball and winning and dominating or whatever, and then you have 98 Jordan just sitting there, lighting up a cigar going, thank god I don't have to practice today. Exactly. He'd probably very much scream at 1990 Jordan would call 1998 Jordan old asshole who doesn't care about winning or something like that, for sure.
Right.
But
exactly. Yeah.
When you're five titles deep, I guess you get a little bit more leeway. So.
Yeah. Well, fair enough. Yes. So the rest of it, focus pretty much is on 93. We talk about the Jordan rules, which actually came out in 91, I believe. But it's more of a recap of just kind of the controversy that came out about that. Some of the things that, some of the revelations about, Jordan was a mean guy to play with. And, Jordan definitely enjoyed I mean, some of the gambling revelations were in that book, right?
Oh yeah. There was a lot in there.
Yeah.
Just the way he treated other people, the gambling, all that sort of stuff. It was basically here's following around Michael Jordan for a year, and it was like, I don't know that anything was like super like, oh my God, you're not going to believe this. It's just like, hey, here's what Jordan does. Jordan, goes on the plane and bets people $25,000, and they're like, Jordan, like, Mike, I don't make I can't afford to spend $25,000 on a hand of blackjack. Like, I only make like $200,000, man. Like, I'm not like you. And yeah, just that, and just kind of the ultra competitiveness, the yelling, the way he treated other people. It was I mean, it wasn't like. It's still kind of greeted as a, oh my God, here's like a, this scathing, review of Michael Jordan, but like no one's ever said anything in there is false. Like, and I think that's the same thing we got in this. It's like, everybody's kind of like, yeah, they said it, but I wonder who said it. Right. And like, what we had more is like, who told everybody that this is how Jordan was?
Right. Yeah.
As opposed to
really,
this is, yeah,
no one really argued about the accuracy of it. It was more, who, because I think Jordan thought it was Horace Grant, and Grant like says it wasn't him. BJ Armstrong brought up that it had to be a lot of sources in a way that makes you think that he was one of the prime sources.
BJ definitely. He's like, hey, look, it could have been any of us.
It could have been anybody. Hey, that'd be a lot of people. Yeah,
for sure.
That'd be a lot of people. Yeah. Phil Jackson tells a story about Krause being mad about some of the quotes in the book. He wants to sit down with Phil and go over all the quotes and, figure out who said it. And, I mean, I think Phil admitted to being source to some of the stuff in the book. So, yeah, I mean, I'm a lot of this is more observation. I mean, this is still a time in which, the coach or the journalists still have, a decent amount of access to NBA teams. So that's very much going to change, I think, partly as a result of this book. And I think the Bulls were the first team in the NBA to really close things off, in a major manner. But, so yeah, some good stuff. I liked the hip hop parade montage with Jordan and Bulls highlights. That layup hand switch against the Nets with those really, really shiny blue Nets uniforms they had that year. That was quite a highlight.
Yeah, it took me a second. I'm like, who the hell was wearing those uniforms?
Right.
And then I'm like, that's Drazen Petrovic. Oh my God, those Nets. Yeah, those Nets uniforms are. I don't think I've ever seen them in the wild like that. I've only just seen pictures of them. So it was they were quite blue. They were very, very blue.
Yes, they were very shiny and very, very blue. But I mean, there have definitely been worse Nets uniforms.
There have, yeah. They're not great, but yeah, there's been worse for sure.
Yes. So then we get into the 93 playoffs. The most famous series, the competitive series, were against the Knicks and against the Suns. The Knicks, obviously, Eastern Conference Finals. And then we finally do get into gambling. The Knicks win game 1 and game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Then there's some newspaper reports that Jordan is seen late in Atlantic City at a casino. I think it was between game 1 and game 2. He said he went with his I think it was his dad, but with other people there. There's a funny clip of who's that New York radio guy?
Mike Francesa. Mike Francesa.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Who says it shows a lack of commitment, which is just kind of hilarious to see, like a dude like that say that about Michael Jordan.
Fat New York radio guy being like, he's not committed. Right. Yeah. That's the sports pope for you.
And then we kind of get the backstory first from David Aldridge about the fact that he had a history of gambling, especially out in the golf course. We get a brief story of Slim Bowler, who was a guy that Jordan ended up having to testify in his trial, and one of the things that's revealed there is that Jordan, owed him, significant gambling debts. And then there's the Richard Aquinas book, the Michael and Me Our Gambling Addiction, which is a hilarious title of a book, which, brings up a lot more revelations of, Jordan's extravagant amount of gambling. And then I love Jordan's quote of like, he's like, oh yeah, I'm just going golf with all these guys. I don't know anything about it. And he's like, then I find out later that all these guys are really bad.
Right. To be innocent again. Yeah. I have never read that book, and I don't believe you have either.
No, I don't plan to read that.
Has anybody read that? I don't think anyone's ever read that book.
Well, people read it enough to make a big deal about it at the time, but yes. So and then Jordan does some interviews, kind of it's like, well, I have a competition problem, not a gambling problem, blah, blah, blah. And he eventually stops talking to the media. In the meantime, the Bulls do rally in the series. Jordan has 54 points in game 4. Game 5 is the famous Smith where Charles Smith misses like 1,000 putbacks at the end to blow for the Knicks. And then game 6, the Bulls wrap it up pretty well. So, we get into the physicality of the Knicks. Not a whole, I mean, some, obviously there's some clips and stuff. They talk about how tough, that they were physically tough, but, they're never really, I mean, the Knicks obviously never beat them with Jordan. So they're not seen on the same level as both a, existential threat to the Bulls and an existential threat to the NBA as, as the Pistons were, of course. So,
yeah, right.
Yeah, sort of interesting how the reputations of them. Like, I feel like the physical, like hard-nosed Knicks have mostly a positive reputation, where the physical, hard-nosed Pistons have mostly a negative reputation, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, it is strange, and I'm watching those clips. It reminds me of that. Like, I'm really glad that basketball's not that way anymore. I know some people who don't watch basketball much anymore are like, I wish it was like that again, but it's like, yes, not really. Like, a little physicality was fine, but all the time, it's just come on, guys. So then we get to the finals. The Phoenix Suns. This is Barkley's MVP year, which of course Jordan is slighted by. Jordan finally breaks his 2-week silence, talking to his good friend NBC's Ahmad Rashad. This was not a good decision by Michael Jordan. Usually he's, very good about his public relations and his is calculating his image. But first of all, he's wearing sunglasses in the interview, which is very bad. And when even
Ahmad, extremely defensive.
I don't want to interrupt you, but when even Ahmad Rashad is like, Jeff, I'm Jeff, like, sunglasses, man, come on. Like, when even Ahmad Rashad is dunking on Michael Jordan, that's like, that is, like, he's literally driving a car with him. Like, that's how much media, like, space Ahmad Rashad was given to Michael Jordan. When even he's like, why is he wearing sunglasses? Come on, Mike. Like, it's bad. But that wasn't great.
Yeah, and we'll circle back to that 98 conversation because I think that's interesting too. But and Jordan actually does talk about retiring soon. And Ahmad, pushes him on it, like, you how soon? Or with this is the first. I don't really remember there being much of a conversation about the idea of Jordan retiring after these finals, up until, of course, his father passed away, and after that. But I don't remember there being any kind of real sentiment that he would actually do that. And you're probably too young to remember any conversation about that in '93.
Yeah, I don't remember actually what people were saying, but I just know from everything that I've read or whatnot that the actual retirement seemed to kind of come completely out of surprise and nobody was really ready for it. But maybe people weren't really reading the words. Maybe those words are a little bit more poignant knowing what happened. But maybe like a guy just says like, I don't have much longer, I'm going to go. And they're like, okay, whatever. And then he plays 10 more years in the league or whatever. But the fact that Jordan did actually retire, maybe we're like, whoa, that was like, I don't know if that was just something that a lot of guys say all the time and we just don't notice, or that it maybe was words that people should have taken a little bit more seriously.
Yes. So back to the Sun series, Jordan talks about going after Dan Marley because Krause loves him. Another moment of pettiness from Jordan. The Bulls win game 1 and game 2. Barkley says that, he felt like in game 2 he played the best that he could play, but Jordan actually played better, which made him feel like for the first time that he wasn't the best. After all, I don't know, Barkley. I mean, Jordan's been like the best player in the league for like 5 years. Maybe you would have gotten a lesson before this time, but hey, okay.
It's like, this Jordan kid's pretty good. It's like, he's all right. He's all right, Barkley. He's not bad.
But the Suns make it tough. Game 3, they win the triple overtime game in Chicago. Game 4, the Bulls come back. Jordan scores 55 points. We see clips of Danny Ainge and Michael Jordan getting into it. Of course, we do like it when Jordan goes after Danny Ainge.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Jordan's punching out Will Purdue and punching out Steve Kerr. Why didn't he just deck Ainge here? It would have been perfect.
Would have been nice, yeah.
Put his ass on the floor. Fuck him.
Yeah, right, exactly. I don't think he would have been punished for it.
No, I don't think nobody in the NBA could have ever. It would have been celebrated, if anything. For
exactly.
One thing I did want to point out that I thought was pretty interesting is we get yet another Michael Jordan pissed that Jerry Krause loves the guy in Dan Marley.
Right.
And I'm starting to wonder, was Jerry Krause playing, mind games with Jordan? I feel like Jerry Krause likes a lot of guys in the NBA that Michael Jordan is like going to be matched up with. He's like, hey, check out this Clyde Drexler guy. Pretty good player, am I right? And he's like, fuck that guy. He's like, hey, Thunder Dan Marley, pretty great player, right? Like, I wondered if Jerry Krause is playing like maybe Jordan was playing checkers and Jerry Krause is playing chess there by just being like
maybe. Yeah. That always worked. Maybe it worked in this instance.
Right. Hopefully he talks shit about Kerry Kittles before this Eastern Conference final.
Or else, I don't know if the Bulls are going to be able to take it. To be honest, I don't think they're going to. I don't think they would be able to handle Kittles without some extra motivation. Yeah, I hear you. So, Suns win Game 5 easily in Chicago. Barkley has a famous quote about you can take the boards down because that people had boarded up their windows in Chicago because they were afraid of after the Bulls winning. On the plane before Game 6, Jordan says, "Hey, I'm only packing one suit. I don't know about you guys." And then they famously win on the John Paxson shot, which a nice pass by Horace Grant, which I had not noticed. I kind of forgotten about what a nice pass that was out of the post from Grant to an open Paxson.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah, a lot of times they'll like cut or just like zoom in on John Paxson, but yeah, like Horace Grant gets this pass, and the play is like appears to be pretty much designed for Horace Grant, and cool moment by him to just realize like, look. They all collapsed on me. Paxson's wide open. Let me give it to him. I mean, that like a lot of guys probably wouldn't do that. A lot of guys would say, "Nope, this plays for me, and this is my time for glory or whatever." But Horace Grant didn't care and throws it out, and it's a great pass, just an awesome pass.
Or maybe he didn't want it enough, Rich. Maybe that's
true. He doesn't love winning like all these other people.
Love winning.
But,
exactly.
I'm kind of upset that he'd made this pass because it's doomed me and other fellow Bulls fans to like 15 years of John Paxson being the GM of the Bulls. It's all right. Whatever. It's okay.
What can you do? And then Bart says, "Sports are like a gunfight, and we lost to the best gun." And
that's a terrible analogy.
I don't know. He's a little circumspect. And then afterward, Jordan talks about being way past exhausted after the third title. Paxson says that, he felt like it was more relief than true joy for both him and for the team, which, again, we've seen that comment, with the Miami, the LeBron Wade Miami, their fourth year. By that time, they were pretty, they kind of felt the same way. Even in a loss, they felt kind of relieved that it was just over. The Warriors recently, so this is certainly, common for other dynasties as well, or other teams that go 3 or 4 finals in a row. Just how challenging that is, how much of a grind it becomes, and how it's almost again it becomes a point where the joy isn't there that it is with the first and the second instance. And then Jordan says, basically, if I had to do it over again, I would never want to be considered a role model just because of all the, kind of some of the pressure, some of the added things, the added scrutiny over your behavior that gives. And we go back to 98 where Ahmad and Jordan are talking about, of course, after he's, come back, after he's left and come back, about the idea of him leaving again. And then, talks about how, some guys talk about how, they want to go until they can't walk off the court. And he's like, I want to leave 2 years before my skills fall off. I want to walk off the court. And he says, I'm not sure if I'm going to miss it. So interesting. Again, that seems in contrast to a degree with Jordan as a competitor. I'm not trying to criticize Jordan at all for this. I mean, I can't imagine the kind of scrutiny and the kind of just exhaustion that you feel just going through this, but it does seem like there is sort of a point where he gets sick of the competition. He just wants to quit. And not that it's too hard for him, but it's just like it's too exhausting for him. I don't know how to. It's sort of interesting how that's sort of at odds with that, I'm the ultimate competitor reputation.
Right. Yeah. And I think without saying it, it's also the scrutiny, the questions about the gambling, the questions about who you're hanging out with, the questions of what you're doing after the games and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I think is weighing on him way more than the games, but he's just sort of saying, the games are getting, this sort of stuff. But I guess, like you're saying, it also, a lot of other guys would be raked over the coals for those sort of comments and that sort of thought and that sort of mentality by people like Michael Jordan would rake those same guys over the coals for saying that. But yeah, he, obviously gets a pass for doing that. And,
no,
and I get it. I understand his point of view, and I understand the point of view of a
Yeah.
lot of people that would have that point of view. But it's just like you said, it's if LeBron says that same stuff, he's, he doesn't care about the game or whatnot. But,
yeah.
For Jordan, it's like, well, yeah, of course he'd be exhausted. Can you imagine his life this way?
Right.
Like, it's like, I get it.
Absolutely.
I understand. But yeah, I'm right with you on that.
Yeah. So anything else?
No, Sherman Douglas, man. I can't wait to see what happens. So.
All right. Well, let's see. Yeah, next week.
That's the extent of without looking it up, I don't know any other 1998 New Jersey Nets than the ones I mentioned. So I don't know if you,
all right.
If you
That's right.
innately know any of other 1999.
Jason Williams, yeah.
Jason Williams, yeah. The shooty one, not white chocolate. The shooty one. Yeah.
Right. Is Sam Cassell on the 97 Nets?
I want to say yes. I don't know.
98 Nets. I believe
I think he is. I think
yes.
he is. Find that out. Let's find that out. I believe he is.
Right,
that's a good team. Hold on a minute. That's a great team. I'm thinking about it now.
Yeah.
You got Kittles, Van Horn, possibly Cassell, Jason Williams, Sherman Douglas, Chris Gatling. I don't know. I don't know.
That's a tough team. Well, yeah, that is Cassell's on there.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, they had a expected win-loss of 46-36 that year. So
it's not bad.
It's 14th in the league. Yeah.
Calipari's got the team. They have Ronnie Cycli too. Oh man, Kendall Gill.
That's right.
Michael Cage, David Benoit.
I think Cycli got hurt by then. I think that was because we did the episode, we did the '98 series, and remember, like Cycli got traded, and and then he got hurt, and so it's sad times.
Saver McDaniel.
All right,
man. Okay, sorry.
Okay. Anyway, all right. So anyway, thanks for checking us out. You can also find us at the Step Back at Fansided. You can also find us on iTunes, Stitcher, pretty much anywhere you listen to your podcast by searching for Over and Back NBA. And we're on Twitter and Facebook at Over and Back NBA. We've got a new playlist on our YouTube channel. We'll include it in the notes. So if you want to check out any of the other episodes we've done about Jordan and the Bulls from this era, you can find it all there. We're still working on getting our back archive up. But in the meantime, check all that out. And thanks for listening. We're back again soon.